One of the main questions that came up when it comes to men and mental health was, what does depression look like in men?
I mean, depression looks like in men like it does in everybody else, but nobody pays attention to it because we've adopted the fact that this is what's normal for men.
Mm,
So I would say majority of men are actually very depressed and they don't even know it.
mhm.
And a lot of it is high functioning depression where they're going to work, they're doing really well in their job, but they have to take a drink every night when they come home because they can't sleep, they can't shut down, their brain is constantly going, they have stomach issues, they're full of anxiety, they can't connect with people, they have no enjoyment, right? Like all of this is happening, but we just see it as, oh, that's every man.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the exact problem. And men don't realize that they can live a life that is free of anxiety and they don't have to take a shot before they go to bed. They can actually sleep peacefully. They can actually enjoy their lives. They don't even recognize that this is a possibility for them.
Do you have I know you said that you don't like doing tools or necessarily coping mechanisms, but when it comes to alleviating anxiety, are there like best practices that you can kind of obviously you want to have things integrated and nothing is a silver bullet, but like best practices or whether it's like a breathing exercise, some kind of meditations like to deal with anxiety?
Yeah, so the first thing I always teach my clients, anybody who comes on a first call with me, is how to self-regulate, which is understanding how to interpret your body's signals and where it's at because the problem isn't mental, stress, anxiety, whatever, it's physiological as well. And so what we try to do is we try to solve all these problems with logic and then we're still wondering why we're still struggling. So this is something that I actually dive in depth. I don't want to like shameless plug, but I have a master class on it where it teaches you actually how to interpret these body's signals. But if you just look at self-regulation, which is what meditation does, it's what yoga does. But if you don't actually know what the purpose of those practices is, it can be really hard to tap into that every time. But essentially, what you're doing is readapting the body to recognize what safety is. Most of us don't feel safe, or our bodies don't feel safe. And so we're constantly pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, which doesn't allow us to relax. And so that's why a lot of these things like journaling and meditation or whatever are temporary because we're not tapping into the safety mechanism of it. So once you tap into the safety mechanism of it, you don't even necessarily need those things as much anymore because you know how to interpret your own body's signals and regulate it.
Are you a fan of, like, incorporating, like, diet changes or what even, like, digital fasting, anything like that when it comes to anxiety or stress?
I don't work with diet or anything
Yeah.
like that simply because I have my own niche, right?
Yeah, mhm.
But in the morning, I tell them to dedicate at least the first 10 to 15 minutes just for them and not before they read the news, before they answer work messages or text messages, because that separation is so necessary for just getting in tune with yourself. And
Mhm.
at times, I have told my clients who are like heavy into news watching because they're accountants or whatever, stop, like limit it as much as possible because they're the ones who are the most anxious about the world is ending, bad things are happening, like all this negative information is constantly being imbued in them and you have to like really change what's surrounding you.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess, if people have the means to find a way to delegate that, right? Like, maybe have someone else bring you a summary of, like, just the important things that you need for work so that you don't get caught up in the stream of negative information that you don't necessarily need. It's not applicable to your job, but it's very hard, even just, like, the way that we're wired to not see and dive into that, which they know. So just, like, being able to mitigate the stressors and, like, the unnecessary stressors that you're putting onto yourself.